Yes, I can see it now. Okay, okay, are you using Bootstrap? Okay, that's fine. So basically, okay, that's fine. You used what for the logo? Okay, 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 well, that's fine. Okay, thank you. So let's just get started with JavaScript. So there'll be no slides or thereabouts. It's just going to be a series of conversations about JavaScript, and I started talking about it already yesterday. But today we are just going to delve deeper. But since we are starting a new phase of the class, I would like for us to start by praying. So if you are of the same faith, maybe this is the point where you just close your eyes and and just say amen to the prayers. So Father, in the name of Jesus, we thank you for the grace to be able to assemble together and learn together. We thank you for the journey that is set before us. We ask that we'll be better off, by the time we get to the other side of this adventure, and that is going to end in praise and to your glory. Thank you, Father, for you've heard us. For we are prayed and asked you in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so guys, so basically we are dealing with JavaScript. Okay, so the part I'm going to start with is I'm just going to do a very small simulation just for you to, because we've been talking about the fact that JavaScript deals with the behavioral aspect of your web page, and I'm sure a lot of people are not they are not quite sure what that means whenever we talk about that. So let's just let me kind of get something to be able to help us illustrate that properly. So okay, I think I grabbed something yesterday, but okay, I think it's in my downloads folder. So I'll just open my Finder and then bring something out quickly. So yeah, so what is that? Okay, so basically this just, oh sorry, I will start sharing my screen, but the streaming already started though, so that's so so here's this image, and the image is basically about the relationship between HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So I saw it a couple of months ago, and I said I was going to kind of show you guys the time we start, working on JavaScript. So it's just a very simple image. So it talks about what we've been, talking about. Like it represents in a very great way what we've been talking about all the while. That HTML deals with the structure, more like the skeleton of your, of your web page, while CSS kind of beautifies it for you, which is what you see here. And then JavaScript on the other hand, kind of just connects the brain to the entire nervous system, that kind of thing. So you can actually see that, okay, like your page is as good as a dead body, just like a dead body with a costume without JavaScript. So it is with JavaScript you actually add behavior. That is when your page becomes a living. So that is when your page can actually, have its own behavioral pattern. That's when you can actually, create, experiences for your user beyond the user interface. So I don't know if you guys if this image is kind of helpful in terms of understanding the relationships. And I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about visual stuff, so I'm just going to create a very nice a simulation at this point in time, and that simulation is basically going to be about JavaScript. And then I'm first of all going to bring up my text editor, which is Visual Studio Code. Of course, you don't have to download anything else, but I would just recommend a couple of extensions if you don't already have them. So one of the extensions I would recommend to you is for you to go to your Visual Studio Code extension store, which is this. Then download this prettier code formatter. And what prettier code formatter does, which I already have downloaded, is that whenever you are writing code, you can actually format your code and save. What that means is when you press Ctrl S to save, or or whatever keyword that you use to save in your own editor, it kind of just automatically indents your code for you. And if I show you an example of that, I'll just create kind of a quick dummy. Let me just open our OIBC folder, which is what we've been working on all the while since we started the class. So I'm just going to go on to delete everything in it. So let's just have that folder. So this is our official folder, because so let's say index.html, and we are still doing HTML. So I'm going to do let me just do the basic doc type declaration. So if for some reasons while I'm writing, so let's say intro to JavaScript. So let's say for some reasons, as I begin to write my code, let's say I have maybe an H1, and I say the H1 is intro. And I was first afraid. It seems as though I won't be able to spell JavaScript today. So let's just start this with live server. So I'm going to just right click on this and click on start with live server. So I wanted to start up here. So it's already started. So we have introduction to JavaScript. And so just having this now, let's say I kind of mess up something, and maybe I typed a button element and I said click me, and my button is not properly indented. Can you guys see that? So for that reason, I have a wrong formatting on my code. So but because of this prettier code format, I can easily press Ctrl S, and then you see it kind of just automatically arranges everything for me. Can you guys see that? So this is the extension that does that for me, and that's prettier. So if you don't have that already, you might want to install that so that we can be on the same page, because when you see some of the things happen, you can easily follow along. So that's prettier. Then the other one I would recommend is so we have Eslint. So I would recommend you download Eslint as well. It's more like integrate Eslint into Eslint JavaScript to VS Code. So it's kind of just a helper. And going forward, I'm just going to you will see how that actually works, because it kind of just gives you some some hints. If you have an error in your code, it kind of just points out a couple of things for you. So you might want to download this as well. It has about 20 million downloads for you to know that it's a very useful tool. Then you might also download. Okay, let's just keep those two, Eslint and then prettier code formatter, just for now. So just to do one of the first things I want to do in this class is to show you a quick demo of how JavaScript actually adds interactivity to your web page. So quickly, I'm going to also create another file here, and I'm going to call that styles.css. And styles.css is just going to have a body tag, and the body tag is going to have a height of 100 VH. Yeah. And then I'm going to give it a display of flex. And then I'm going to give it a justify content center or align item center. Okay. So hold on. So let me just let me inspect why that isn't working. Okay. So height 100 VH. So okay. Lagara. So for some reasons, I think let me just wrap this in a div because the body tag is being so silly. So let me put this both in a div because just to show you the demo, and then so let me do div. I think I have some extensions that actually messes this up. So let me do a class name and give it a box. So why is that happening? Okay. Why is it doing like this? So let me just kind of. So I actually have a lot of other extensions already installed. So let me see what is really happening here. Okay, for some reasons my style isn't even getting applied here. Oh. You guys know why? I haven't even linked my. I haven't linked my. You haven't. Oh, sorry. So that's. Oh, that's crazy. Some crazy set of things. As a matter of fact, I don't even think I need all of this. So just to make sense out of it, let's just let me remove this also, so everything can just sit in the center by itself. Okay. Then I think I have to do flex direction column. Okay, then let me just start the button background color. Let's do a light blue, and then let's do color of dark blue, and then let's do um outline border of none as well. Then let's also do padding, and let's do 10 pixels up and down and 20 pixels left and right. Then okay, I think that should be okay. So instead of borders, let's just do border 1 pixel solid, dark blue, and then let's do a border radius of 8 pixels maybe. Okay, so this is just a regular button, and then cursor is pointer, so that I just get that stuff when I kind of hover on top of it. So this is what I want. So basically you see that when I click on this button, nothing happens basically. So one of the first things you want to like this where JavaScript, for instance, the button says click me, but there's no way in the world you can actually get anything to happen when you click on this particular element without the help of JavaScript, and so that's why we are going to be adding another file, and we can actually write JavaScript just like when we did CSS. We wrote CSS inline, we wrote it at the block level, and then we wrote it externally. Then I talked about CDN, where you can actually write a CSS file and host it online, and then people can actually through a CDN, use your hosted CDN CSS file inside of their document or inside of their project. So what you do in JavaScript is you would use a script tag to include JavaScript in your project, and inside of your script tag you can actually write any JavaScript expressions, so more like console.log. And then you see I have hello world inside of my console, which is this. We used to use elements before, then now we're using console because this is where you actually engage with JavaScript. And even without writing, any JavaScript in our code here, I can actually do something like 2 plus, 2, and it gives me 4. I can do 3 times, 6, and it gives me 18. I can do 4 minus 2. I can actually start writing JavaScript directly inside of my console here, and that makes sense. And then I can also, kind of just create a dummy JavaScript file inside of, my sources folder here. I can actually create a new snippet and start writing JavaScript, but I'm not going to do that just yet. So let's just watch the console and let's watch the interaction we are going to be having with this what's it called, the button. So I'm going to create a new function. What did you say? Yes. Does anybody have any question? Or am I going too fast? Hello? Okay, that's fine. So what we are going to do now is I'm just going to create a function. You don't have to worry about functions or whatever it is now. So I'm just going to say test function. And I'm going to kind of just say, inside of my test function, I want to alert, So this is just like a quick demo of, what JavaScript does. Then inside of, my button here, I'm just going to do, on click. And then on click, I want to call test function. And then when I click on this, watch what happens. You can see I get interaction on my web page. Can you see that? So there's a whole lot of things I can actually do on click. So for instance, on click, I can actually say document dot, and don't worry about the query selector, and I say select the body element, and I say dot style dot color equals, and you see what happens. I actually get to change the background color of the document just by clicking the button. So those are the kind of interactions we actually, we can get out of JavaScript. And now you can actually see how JavaScript can bring your pages to life. So like when you guys add that nice button at the bottom of your page and you want to allow your page scroll to the top when you get to the bottom of the page. So with JavaScript, you can actually achieve all of that. So this is not the point of what we are trying to do, with JavaScript today. So I'm just trying to show you what's obtainable. So this is you actually writing JavaScript, at the block level, not in an external file. But most times you want to write JavaScript in an external file. And as you can see, I'm actually writing JavaScript at the bottom of the body tag, and that's where it's supposed to be, because JavaScript kind of takes, you want JavaScript to be the last thing that loads on your page. So you want to put your CSS and every other, similar asset at the top of the page, because if you put JavaScript at the top, a lot of things might not work, very well, because JavaScript will take some more time to load. So you want to load the visuals, that is the UI of your page first. Then you allow JavaScript to load last, because it is okay when you actually have a working web page and for some reasons JavaScript hasn't completely loaded. So you can it's fine to have a button, but you can't click on it yet. And you must have seen that kind of experience on some web pages before, where you actually you are trying to click a button and it's not just working, probably due to the fact that the network is slow on that particular day and so on. So those kind of things happen, and that's why it's recommended and it's the best practice to put JavaScript at the bottom of your page. So, and that's why if you inspect a lot of source code, you always see that JavaScript will be at the bottom of the page. But there's one other way, you can actually include JavaScript at the top of your page, and that's when you use something called defer. When you put this defer keyword, it kind of just, it instructs the browser to skip everything and allow your JavaScript to load last, even if it is at the top of your page. So that's that about that. So what we are going to be doing, I'm not going to be beating around the bush showing you how to write JavaScript at the block level, but this is all you just need to do: an opening script tag, a closing script tag, and then you are going to write every JavaScript you want to write, or any JavaScript you will ever need, inside of your opening and closing script tag, just like inside of CSS. When we're doing block level CSS, you would create a style tag, and then you write all of your CSS inside the style tag. So for JavaScript, you also create a script tag, which is a special HTML tag, and you can add all of your JavaScript code inside of it. So the other way to actually make write external JavaScript is by creating the JavaScript file and then adding a source attribute to your page, and then your source attribute is going to be pointing at the file. So let's just say the file we want is, let's say index.js, not index.html. So this time around, we don't have that file already created. So we are going to create a new file, and then we do index.js. And you can see I'm using .js, not .html or .css. .js is the what's it called? is the extension for JavaScript files. So the moment you do .js, your computer knows that, or your text editor knows that you are actually trying to create a JavaScript file, and it creates one for you. Do you understand? So when I press enter, so everything I did inside of that other, inside of this, when I use this script tag and wrote the code directly inside of here, I can actually do it inside of this file, and it's just going to work the same. So I think I have that code still. So let me just, remove the script tag, which I don't need anymore at this point, and I save. And if I click this, you see the same thing still happens. Do you understand that? So now I moved my JavaScript file, from the internal, where it is inside of my, HTML, and I moved it outside, but there's no getting around having to add your script tag here, because you have to add the script tag anyhow. So let's kind of just create a comment and say Java files. So, but in this case, we have just one. So let me just keep it singular. So that's that. So you can see here we have a click functionality. Now you can add more things. I can also decide to, while I'm doing this, I can decide to console.log document. Okay, let me not do that. Okay, I can decide to do console.log hello world, and I can also decide to, alert something. Alert hello. So you can see this. So you see all of those three things will happen. So you can see we have the console.log. Then nothing like this particular code will might not execute until I confirm my alert, because the alert will prompt me to actually press OK. So once I press OK, you can see we have a log in our console which is hello world, which is this line 2 here, and you can see it shows you that inside of index.js line 2 you actually have that line of code that executed here. So when I click on it, I can actually see my JavaScript file inside of here. I don't know if you guys can see it clearly. So you can see, yeah. So this is just like a quick demo of JavaScript, which is what I intended for you guys to see just before we delve deeper into what we have for today. So that's that about that. So let me just go on and clear all of this stuff, because we are not going to actually be done. And once I do that, when I click on the button, I'm actually clicking, but nothing is happening now because there's no interactivity. We don't have any JavaScript currently working here. And then when I click this, it tells me that test function is not defined, which is this function on this on-click handler. It is trying to call it, but it is not defined. So let me just remove all of that and just leave our button bare as it is. So, like I said, you are going. I believe you all have Visual Studio Code, and you have installed the extensions I told you to install. That will make and what we are doing smooth and and clean. So for tonight, I just want us to be able to achieve a couple of things, and that's to understand some fundamental concepts in JavaScript. So somebody is just coming into the class now. Let's allow them. Okay. I think he was informed late. Okay. So what we are doing now is, I already gave you the things you need to set up your environment and the extensions you need to download in VS Code. And I recommend you use VS Code actually, because VS Code is, is what we are using for the class officially, and it is light. It is okay. There's no reason why you shouldn't want to use it, except you are doing something, very, very intense that you will need an actual IDE like Android Studio or Microsoft Visual Studio or something like that. So the first thing we want to be able to achieve tonight is to understand basic concepts like values in JavaScript, and then to know the different data types that exist in JavaScript, and also to write some basic arithmetics in JavaScript, and to understand the concept of operators and the applications with different kinds of data in JavaScript. So I would want you to, kind of just engage a lot. And if you take notes in class, I want you to take notes, because as I define a couple of things, I want you to just, kind of pen them down in the way you understand. Why is it that whenever I try to write JavaScript, I would write JavaScript? It is JavaScript. Okay, so that's by the way. And guys, this is the point where I tell you to turn on your cameras. Everybody. And just turn it on. Turn it on. The Lord will be your light. Just on it. Even if there's no light, just turn it on. Man, Nigeria is black, bro. But it's fine. Okay. Okay, that's fine. So let's go on. So, like I said, so that's the objective, to understand basic concepts, and to know the different data types, to write basic arithmetics, and to understand JavaScript operators and the applications with different data types. And all of these things might sound gibberish to you at the moment, but you will understand them in no time. So I'm just going to kind of do a couple of explanations, and then we delve deep into the practical aspect of the session. So I mentioned earlier that and that was yesterday, that the primary work of a programmer is simply to be able to communicate with a machine. And in this case, that machine is none other than the computer. So that's your work basically. You want to learn how to speak to the computer at a level that the ordinary user does not know how to. So you can begin to program the computer to begin to do things for people or do things for you that you can't just find, or can't get that kind of freedom when you only consume what other people have created. For instance, even if there's something you like to see on Facebook, if it is not there, it is not there. You being a user cannot add that functionality to Facebook. And the only way to add that functionality to Facebook is you build your own version of it and add that functionality by yourself. That example is not very practical, but I hope you understand what I'm talking about. So all you need to do is just write some set of information, and those information will just be instructions that you are giving to the computer to execute at a particular point in time. It might be to add two numbers together, or to run over some series of data and add them and then return the sum to you, or maybe to watch for some information online, and when that information is available, you want it to save it somewhere for you. So those instructions can vary, and it can go from very simple instructions like adding 2 plus 2 to very complex instructions like running over 15 million data points and trying to get an aggregate of various start points, that kind of thing, if you know what I mean. So the key word here is information. As a developer or as a programmer, you are actually passing information across to the computer, and those information are basically instructions. And the essence of you actually informing the computer is because you want the computer to do something in return, whether for you or for someone else. It doesn't really matter, but you just want it to carry out some set of instructions. So information is the key word. And at the heart of information, the art of information implies that you are actually communicating something. And the most important aspect of communication is that meaning is established. That is, there's actually meaning in what you are communicating, because information is not useful until it can make meaning to the person you are discussing with. And that brings us to the point where we talk about the concept of value and data in computing, because the information will be given to the computer in form of data and values. So that's what you call them basically in programming. But if it is in your day-to-day living, you are going to call those things information. Yeah, or a message. But what you are sending to the computer basically through your fingers is just some set of information. And then that's very vital for you to understand, and just keep that in mind, that what you are giving to the computer is information. And then, okay, for instance, we are in a class at the moment and we are communicating, but can anybody just point out to me some very important things that needs to be in place if our communication in this class must be fruitful or effective? Can anybody just kind of just kind of, if there's anything that comes to your mind first, like, okay, in order for me to be able to understand what this person is saying, some things has to be, have to be in place, that is, be on check. And I'll pick the first option. The first option is that you have to be able to listen to me. That means your ears must be working for you to be able to get this information, right? So what other factor do we need? People of God. Hello. We promised each other that we will engage. You are saying yes, sir. That's not what I need. I'm saying, what are the things that are necessary for us to communicate in this class? And that's what I'm talking about. Okay. You say yes, sir. You did. Eyes to see. Okay, yeah, eyes to see, because some information coming in like a visual form. So any other person will try. Huh? I didn't hear what you said. Attentiveness. Okay, you have to be attentive. So, and let's just stop here. Okay, someone said, the eyes to see. I said the ears to hear. And someone said, attentiveness. And all of these things actually pertains to, your communication with the computer. For instance, the computer has a way of listening to you, either through the keyboard or through the mouse, right? Or if it's your computer is the type that has, maybe like a touch screen, you can actually, you can pass information through those means. So the sense organs are actually working. Then attentiveness, that is, the computer, as long as it is on, is ready to listen to you. If it is asleep or it is shut down, it can't listen to you. So even if you are pressing the keyboard 200 times, it can't get what you're talking about. So attentiveness checks. But one of the most fundamental things, in as much as all of these other things, are in place, is the concept of language. Even if your eyes are working, your ears are working, and you can see clearly, and like you can understand, you have the ability to understand, your mind is sound and sharp. If you don't understand my language, we can't communicate. Does that make sense? Hello? Yeah. So now we all know that the computer is just a machine, and machines are constrained rather. And what they are constrained to is their design. There's no machine that has an infinite, ability to, do all things. They are always constrained to their design. Even if your computer can do a lot of things, it is still constrained because of the design. In other words, there are some kind of games it might not be able to play. There are some kind of, tapes you might not be able to play. There are some kind of videos you can't play because of some limitations. And we have to keep modifying the behavior of the computer to be able to, kind of just, get past or go past those limitations. So language is a very important thing. And when you are learning programming, what you are learning is the ability to speak the language that the computer speaks. So in computing, we have various categories of languages. We have machine language, which is the native language of the computer. What is your native language, if I may ask? Triumph. Hmm? Okay, so you speak your language very well and you understand your language. Okay, but you can understand, but it is your native language. So can I just get somebody who is native and can speak their language like me? Is there any other person? Don't be ashamed now. Okay, can you just kind of say something about this class in your language, and let's see where we'll be at. Huh? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, you can see what that sounds like. Like, I don't know about you, but I don't understand a bit of what he said. You get the point? Like, I don't understand a bit of what he said. And when you are actually, programming, it means you have to be able to speak the language that the computer understands. And if you can't speak the language the computer understands, the computer is going to be like me in this case. I don't know what you're talking about. And we call that I don't know what you're talking about most times. We call it error. The computer is throwing error or it is displaying error. That error simply means whatever you did, I don't get it. Do you understand what I'm talking about? and we most of us, we always have this way. For instance, if you go to maybe the north, for instance, even though most times you don't understand anything at all, you should be able to tell somebody that Banaji Hausa, like, I don't understand Hausa, that kind of thing, or somebody say mi ò gbọ́ Yoruba, that kind of thing. People always know that part of the language. So when the computer actually throws an error, it is a way of telling you that mi ò gbọ́ Yoruba, that is, I don't understand Yoruba, or I don't understand Hausa. So the language your computer understands basically is the machine language. And then this machine language is just, it's a sequence of zeros and ones. That is the only way the computer actually understands things. And these zeros and one, we don't actually have the luxury of time to begin to go deep into it. The zeros and one are just basically, logic gates, or a series of yes or no, or on and off switches that the computer switches on its CPU. And this, switches is how the computer is able to, kind of carry out the instructions you give to it. But the problem is, this is what, a binary code, which is, the 0 and 1 I'm talking about, this is what it looks like. And there used to be a time when people basically wrote their programs in this manner. This computer programs used to look like this, more like a bunch of zeros and a bunch of ones. So if you were to represent, the number 13, and I write 13, let's just look at Visual Studio Code, or let's come to our console, and I write 13, or for instance, and I press enter, you can see, JavaScript actually returns 13 to me. And if I write something gibberish, it still, it tells me error because it doesn't understand what I'm talking about. But if I do this, I can see JavaScript returns that because it understands what I'm saying. You're going to see the reason why it actually understands these things. But it doesn't understand this. He's saying that, what is that? And then what does that mean? I don't understand what you're talking about. So, but this 13 actually has a representation in 0 and 1. That is, there's a way to actually write this 13 in binary code. And 13 in binary code will be written as 1101. This is 13, and it is in base 2. I don't know if you can remember, binary conversion, from secondary school or something like that. So this is 13. And you can actually, the computer actually, when it sees 13, this is what it reads in its memory. And this is what it stores in its memory. It never stores 13 in its memory. It stores your number in, this binary, it stores it as a binary number. It stores it. Binary means just a 2-number system. 0, it's either 0 or 1. And this 0 or 1 is how it's going to communicate, and kind of just, interpret whatever it is you write to it, provided the fact that what you said can be interpreted within the context of this language. Because there's always this problem of when somebody speaks a language and you can't find the accurate, vocabulary to express that language in some other different languages. So here you actually see the computer saying AFDAF, blah, blah, blah. I don't understand what that means. And then it throws you an error, reference error. This is not defined because it is trying to find this in a particular space where it doesn't exist. Does that make sense to you guys? Hello? Yeah, so machine language is the lowest form of language that the computer understands, or the native language of the computer. And yeah, it is a sequence of zeros and ones. And that's how the computer actually gets kind of understands every single thing you communicate to it. So the the other tier of language is what they refer to as, assembly languages. That is the closest to machine languages. And assembly languages is just more like when you will require an assembler to actually assemble it into machine language. So an assembly language, let me just show you an example of that, will look like this. So if the computer was to have, a second language, the assembly language would be the second language of the computer. So if you speak 3 languages, so you can see this is more human readable. Maybe you might not be able to make sense out of it, but it still feels like something that you can at least make small sense out of, right? Compared to when you have zeros and ones like we had in the last example. So this is the second level of language that you have on the computer. Then the third level is what you call low-level languages. And low-level languages when programming language actually come into that human readable language actually start existing. And you have languages like C, C++, or Rust. So those languages are kind of closer to the computer's native language, but they are also more human readable in such a way that they have to be what compiled. And what I mean by compile is that the languages, though they be in another form, they have to be compiled together, at execution time for them to be able to be, converted into machine language that the computer can understand, because the computer does not speak English. Forget about all these things you are seeing on your screen. The computer process this thing with zeros and one and kind of translate it to what you can read. Do you understand what I'm talking about? So if you were to look into your CPU, what you are going to see is a long chain of zeros and one. And it is said that, the modern computer has about 30 billion bits. And this bit is just like like each unit of a binary number, which is more like either a zero or a one. So a modern computer, has about 30 billion, bits in its working memory, which is the RAM. So we have the assembly high level and low level language. And the next one we have is the high level language, which is more human readable, which is easier to learn. And that's where you have things like Python, JavaScript, and Ruby, and then some other languages out there. So, and that's, JavaScript you're learning is a high level language. So it's very close to English language, but it's not English language. So what you do with high level language, the computer actually interprets the high level language using a program called an interpreter. So the interpreter interprets the high level language into, an assembly language, then it converts it to machine language. So the high level language is the farthest, from the machine language. And that's what most people use nowadays. And that's what most of the applications you see, like Facebook.com, even Visual Studio Code, was built with JavaScript. Slack was built with JavaScript and so many other programs. Then you have Python and its appearances in all of these places as well. And, these are high level languages. So you should keep in mind that because the computer only understands zeros and one, it is limited in its ability to be able to translate English languages. So programming language is just languages that are based on the understanding or the ability of the computer to interpret specific words, that is keywords and syntaxes, so that it can make meaning out of them in its own native language. Does that make sense to you guys? Hello? Hello? Yeah? Okay. So, and that's why, when we want to declare variables, and we say we declare variable with things like var, my name equals, Ololade. So, you shouldn't be so bothered about why is this var here. This var is how we tell the computer that, okay, what I'm about to write is a variable name. And on the other side of this variable name, which this, assignment operator, on the other side of the variable name is the value I want assigned to this variable. Do you understand what I'm talking about? So, but these are strict rules that you have to follow because you are moving between various languages, and there are some rules that you just have to follow. You get the point? In order for you to have, an accurate interpretation, because high level languages are interpreted, low level languages are compiled, assembly languages are assembled, and the machine language is what the computer can write. And you can actually decide to take out your time and learn machine language. Maybe by the time you turn 40, you'll be a pro at it, because it is actually very difficult. So so what you want to learn basically is either a low level language or a high level language. And high level language is actually, easier to use, and companies actually prefer them compared to low level languages. And people that use low level language are actually people that deal with core things, like people who design operating systems, like people who designed, for instance, Windows, who design Linux. Like those people are the people that actually try to go as close as possible to machine language. But nobody dares go close to machine language. It is actually possible to learn, but why do you want to learn machine language in 2022? But you can actually try. But another language that is kind of more advisable to learn is assembly language, which is very useful if you want to begin to do some nice things as well with the computer. So that being said, let me just give you an interesting analogy just to make this sink in. Do you know that when you actually eat food, hello, hello, can anybody tell me why they feel hungry when they feel hungry? Why do you feel hungry sometimes? Please don't go so deep into biology. Don't talk about neutrons and, blah, blah, blah. Just kind of give a generic answer. Why do you feel hungry? Okay, then why is it that sometimes, even when you are very hungry, you just eat some kind of food, or maybe you just perceive some kind of food and you just lose your appetite almost instantly? Have you ever thought about that before? Or has it ever happened to you before? More like it's like the thing just drove the hunger away. Like the hunger just ran away and you can't even find the hunger. But it might probably come back with full force, maybe in a couple of hours, But for that particular moment, you just kind of, and you know why? That it is because what your body actually does is that your brain will send signal, to your body that it needs some nutrients when you are starting to become, and when you start going short on those nutrients. So your brain begins to send signal to you. And sometimes when your brain actually sees something that is detestable or that is disgusting, that comes from that same stream that it is requesting nutrients from, it kind of just shuts down and doesn't send you that request anymore. Do you get my point? This is how in economics you reach diminishing marginal returns, like more like you are consuming one thing over time and all of a sudden, because it is proven that when your brain begins to receive the same kind of stimuli over a long period of time, it kind of just shuts down. That's why you fall asleep maybe sometimes when you are on the highway in the night. The light patterns and everything is just the same, so your brain just tends to shut down. So always beg your driver and engage him when you're traveling at night so that he doesn't fall asleep. It is called highway hypnosis. That's just by the way. So basically, your body doesn't actually understand the things. Your body doesn't know what it is your tongue that tastes things. Your brain does not. Your body, like that is your small intestine and large intestine that actually process what you eat. Don't actually understand the taste of any of the things you eat. What they want is nutrients. You get the point. So whether you eat 12 mountains of fufu, your body doesn't, your intestine doesn't care. What it wants is nutrient. You get the point. So it is nutrients your body looks for. Your body understands nutrients, and it is on the basis of these nutrients you can actually become very fat after eating some kind of food, or you become very thin in as much as you are eating too much, because you can be consuming a lot of food and those food don't actually have a lot of nutrients, and you don't look healthy still. You get the point. So that's the same way you can be writing a lot of code, and the computer doesn't understand what you're saying. You don't get success while you're trying to execute your program, because what the computer understands is a language, and that language is a bunch of zeros and one. And if what you are writing cannot be translated or interpreted in the form of on the basis of zeros and ones, your computer does not understand, and it does not rate you as a developer. You just be like, who is this person that is disturbing my brain? That kind of thing. So just like your body understands nutrients, basically, not the taste of food, your body becomes, nourished on the basis of the nutrients you receive, not on the basis of the food you eat, basically. Yeah, that's how the computer doesn't get, excited about how many code you write, but on the basis of how it is able to, interpret whatever you're writing on the basis of zeros and one. I don't know if you understand what I'm talking about, or if that makes sense. Hello. And then that the same thing goes for when somebody speaks multiple languages. When you speak multiple languages, like maybe you like speak 5 languages or 10 different languages, if you are that powerful, when somebody actually talks to you, most times you actually consolidate whatever they've said into one particular language that can help you understand it. Isn't that true? So that's the same thing that the computer does. There are different programming languages: JavaScript, Python, C, C++, C Sharp, Rust, Ruby, and so on. The computer consolidates everything, interprets or compares depending on what level the language is at, and translates them into what it understands and processes things on the basis of what it understands. And that's why sometimes when you just talk to someone and say, slow down, slow down, slow down, can you come again? And let's take it slowly. You get the point. So sometimes the computer can be like that with you. So between your computer and yourself being a programmer are some series of background of this one is another bit, this other one is a bit, this other one is another bit. So because this one particular bit is so small that it can hardly represent any data by itself. I don't know if you get my point. For instance, I just told you that just this number 13, for instance, like I said the other time, this number 13, in binary form is 1101, and you can solve that if you can still remember how to do that. I was actually planning to solve that, but I think we don't have the time to do that. So this is 13, imagine. So because the computer can become so unfruitful in terms of having to use just a bit to be able to represent your number, because this one bit can hardly represent any number. You get the point. So what the computer does basically is to it groups that long sequence of bits, which I told you that every most modern computers have about 30 billion bits in their RAM, that is in their working memory. So what it does is it groups this bit into groups of 8, and 8 bit is what we now know as a byte. Did you get the point? So we now have 1024 bytes is what we now call a kilobyte. Then 1024 kilobyte is what we refer to as a megabyte. Then 1024 megabyte is what we call a gigabyte. 1024 gigabyte is what we call a terabyte. And then that's as far as I know it, And I haven't seen anything after terabyte, but you understand what I'm talking about. So you can see how it actually starts on the basis of bits. Do you understand something fresh about this whole thing now? I know most of you have been talking about my phone is 50 gig now, it's 256 gig, blah blah blah, all those kind of things. Or my RAM is 18 gig. This is why you actually need RAM that is so big, because if your RAM is so small, let's say your RAM is 8 megabyte, that means the moment you process 13, you only have about 4 more bits left, so you can only process 13 twice. And you should understand that your text editor is also processing a lot of things in the background. So that's why you can run out of RAM space, because you have processed more than enough bits that your RAM can process. Do you get the point? That's why when you have 4 gigabytes of RAM, you can do more compared to someone that has 1 gig RAM. That's why someone that has 16 gig RAM can actually do so much more with their phones. Their phone is so fast. While you are trying to open YouTube and the thing is loading and loading, it's trying to shut down other things so that your YouTube can work. Or it tells you app stopped responding, or this program is no longer responding. Most of the time it's just on the basis of what you have available in your working memory, and it is just this long sequence of bits. But this bit, because it can be so long, it has to be grouped. And when you group it into what we now know as value. So the minimum value that can exist is a bit, but the minimum usable value that can exist is a byte. And a byte is just 8 bits. So that means 8 binary points. Do you understand what I'm talking about? And that 8 binary point can either store 0 or 1 on in various respective sequence, depending on the data that the computer translates or interprets into that particular sequence of bits. Does that make sense? Hello? Hello? Please, if it doesn't make sense, if you have a question, just ask now. Hello? No, not necessarily. You don't have to be doing a lot of work. This whole thing I'm talking about, and I'm about to come to that. You don't actually have to worry about all of these things, because JavaScript actually, it manages memory by itself. It manages memory internally, because there's a limit to how many bits you can create with JavaScript. For instance, and when we start talking about values, like we talk about types of values, we are going to talk more about that. So there's a limit to how much bits you can create with JavaScript. So JavaScript kind of manages those things by itself for you. So low level languages like C, C++, don't manage memory for you. You have to be the one to account for memory by yourself. You get the point? You have to make sure that as you are creating, your variables, and you are creating, value in form of variables inside of your program, you are managing the memory space that your program is consuming, so you don't run out of memory space. Does that make sense? Hello. So while we are talking about bit, byte, and so on, so let's start talking about value. So one of the most fundamental things, or the building blocks, in JavaScript is or any programming language whatsoever, is value. And value is basically data. And this data is what I talked about, earlier as information. It is what you are actually sending to the computer, and it is what the computer will respond to you with. And this, information will be wrapped, in a programming concept known as value or data. So, but for the purpose of this class, we are going to be calling it, value for the most part. So, just like I said, whatever you are shipping to the computer, will be stored in series of zeros and one, and it is very important to keep that in mind. Maybe after this class, you might not need to remember that anymore, but that's fine. So keep it in mind for the purpose of understanding the next couple of concepts we are going to be dealing with. So I said to you that this sequence of data can become very long, and I said we can have up to 30 billion, 30 billion sequence of bits, in modern computers in their RAM. And this is actually a lot. When I mean a lot, it means a lot. That means if it were to be a number, you can actually, this is talking about, trillions upon trillions upon trillions upon trillions. You can't actually exhaust that. So the sequence of 0 and 1 definitely will have to make meaning to the computer. So when you have something like, let's say 1011, 00111, the computer actually understands. No, there's no 2, it's just zeros and 1. I don't know when I got into that equation. So 01111, 0111, the computer will actually understand this. And you can actually see that the computer is actually, doing something with this. It's actually converting it. Can you see it's converting it into an actual number? But whatever that means, and this could mean it could be a statement even in English language. It could be an alphabetical sequence of data that you just sent in. So just like in your regular communication in English, when when you have a sentence, for instance, your sentence is just a collection of characters or alphabets, and maybe symbols like full stop, apostrophe, or whatever. Then these characters or alphabets are grouped together to form words, and then the proper arrangement of the sequence of these words will now make meaning out of the sentence. So, and in a normal regular sentence, while we speak English language, you realize that every word will have its own specific use. Like we have parts of speech. One might be a verb, one might be an adjective, one might be a preposition or whatever it is. So every word in the sentence will have their own specific purpose, and they are of different types, and of varying proportions. So in this case, when you have a long string of binary codes like this given to the computer basically analyzes this and interprets this, and then it also has its way of grouping these various whatever statement it is able to arrive at, or whatever destination it arrives at, what you've put into it. It's able to kind of categorize each part of this sequence of binary numbers into different types, and that's what they call value types in JavaScript. So these value types actually vary from it varies. So let me just cancel this. So the first value type in JavaScript, and maybe some of you must have seen that before, is number. So the number is a value type, and maybe I should just start doing that in the text editor. So we have the number value type, and let me go here. So the number value type is basically you just type in 4, or type in 13, or 12, or type in 23. These are all numbers in JavaScript. And if I come to and one of the first things you have to start doing in JavaScript is to be able to output what you're doing. So one of the most common ways to output what you're doing while you're working in JavaScript or any of these languages is to be able to output things to console. So one of the things inbuilt helpers to help you do that in JavaScript, which is basically a function, it is the console.log. So you are saying log this particular value inside of the console. So whatever you put in between the parentheses is what is going to be logged into the console. So let's just log the number 4, for instance. And then when I save, you are going to see that we now have 4. And then this 4 now is a type of number. This 4 is a type of number. Then, so let's just say here. So let's write comments in JavaScript. So the way you write comments is // Then so let's say this is a type. So data types in JavaScript, and then the first data type is numbers, and I'm going to also comment that out. So let me kind of create this fancy kind of comment. So we have data types, and then we have numbers. So the first one we are dealing with is numbers. So under numbers, I log this out just to output it into the console in the browser here. So you can see the number, and the number 4 is actually a number. Yeah, so basically numbers in JavaScript are basically numbers as we know them. So you can write 400, you can write 500. If it is a number, it is a number. So that's the first data type. The second data type, and let me just kind of put a number in here just to help you understand. So the second data type is strings. Yeah, that's correct. So we have strings, and this is not the no strings attached kind of string. This is just like string, and strings are just basically words, or we console.log something, and then we are let me just get rid of this stuff. So let me disable this and just say this is a string. So it can, let's just use a single word, or maybe let me just type string, not to complicate things. So string, and when I save it, you actually see that the word string got, it's inside of, the JavaScript console here in the browser. And can you guys see that? So I'm making it bigger. So is it clear now? Okay. So the other type, and string are just basically words, normal regular words in English language. But it is very important for you to understand that in order for you to write a string in JavaScript, and numbers are quite straightforward because you just write the number using the numerical keys on your keyboard. But for strings, there are a couple of ways to write strings. So the first one is by using single quotes. So the second way is by using, double quotes. And I'll still write the same thing with double quotes. So this is also a string. And then the third type is by using backticks, which is the number, the symbol beside. Somebody just trying to join the class. Should we allow them? Okay. Not basically a student. That's my brother. Okay, so the other type, the other way of writing a string is by using what they call backticks, and that's that symbol B beside your number 1 on your keyboard above your tab key. That's the backtick. So you can also write string backticks. They call them backticks. So you can also see this is also a string. Can you see that? Let me say this one with single quotes. Does that make sense? So the other type of data we have is the Boolean. And Booleans are very nice. It's actually where it becomes interesting in JavaScript, where things become interesting, because most of the things you'll be doing in terms of logical or logical operations, conditionals, and so on, will be on the basis of Boolean values. And Boolean values are just, they just have two possible values. They are binary. And what that means is that they can either evaluate to true or false. So a Boolean value is a value that is either true or false. And what that means is either yes or no. So true or false. That's a Boolean value. So yeah, that's that. So another type we have in JavaScript, we have empty values. And empty values include null and undefined. Yeah. And under numbers, I forgot to include that we also have, some special numbers like negative infinity and then positive infinity. Infinity is now hard to spell today. Okay, so we have negative, and you can see that the comments are not actually getting, executed into the console because we are not actually executing them. We are just, a comment is just basically to just show you around the code. It's not basically for execution. So if I come here and then, I do, for the empty values, I do a console.log and I do null. And you can see that null is actually a type. You see, null gets type, and null actually means nothing. Then undefined, console.log, undefined, actually practically means undefined. So when an evaluation is something that the computer can't make meaning of, it kind of just results to undefined. Then there's another kind of special number which I also forgot to include, and that is none. That is not a number. And not a number. We're actually going to do some, arithmetic operations around these, value types, we have now. So we have other value types basically, but these are the ones referred to as, primitive values. And primitive values are the values that can only be assigned with a singular value. and they can either have that value, and what you can't mutate those values. Either you assign those value or you remove those value from those variables. And we delve deeper into that, going forward. So basically, let's just kind of under the number, these various data types. In order for us to be able to work with various data types, there's another aspect of JavaScript called, so not aspect of JavaScript. What do I mean? Aspect of JavaScript. So we have operators, and operators basically are just they are also data points, or not data points basically, or what do they call them? They are just basically your arithmetic operators basically. But in JavaScript we have more than arithmetic operators, like plus, minus, multiplication, division. We have a couple of them. So the first operator we have is we have plus, the plus operator. And then I'm going to kind of just I'm going to write out all the list of operators. Then I'm going to kind of just show you what they do to the various data types, because not all operator types will be compatible with all the various data types. For instance, what will if I have two strings like console.log, let's say I have a string and I have a, and I say a plus b. No, a plus b, not a plus b basically. Let's say I say a divided by b. How is JavaScript supposed to make sense out of that? Make sense out of a divided by b? You see, it told me none. That is, it is not a number. A divided by b cannot be evaluated to a number. You get it? So these operators can be, some of them work with, some more than one data type, but for the most part, you basically will be operating on numbers, because these are basically arithmetic operators. So arithmetic operators, if that's how they spell it today. So we have minus. And most times you always see these two grouped together. Okay, let me just group them together. So I can group this is the multiplication and there's no need to be putting operator behind it. So let's say plus and minus. Okay, does it make sense to you guys like this? This is the multiplication symbol. So we also have this operator, and this is I know this one will be very unfamiliar. So this is the modulo, and then what you use is to check basically the remainder of a division operation. So let's begin to apply them on this number type. So we have and then let me just comment out all of this console.log so that the console looks neater. Yes, so we have console.log. So let's add two numbers together. So let's say 400 plus 600, 500. Okay, that's fine. So we can see we have, and let me remove this, 900. So we have 900, right? So it adds values together. So this is basically an operation. And then when we perform this operation, with this arithmetic operation, it combines two values, or it operates on two values rather, to create a new value. And in this case, we have 900, right? So 900 is what we have in the console. So we have what was I going to write? I was going to say something. Okay, addition. Then we have console.log 400. Sorry, let's say 600. And let's just say 400. Okay, I don't want to get negative values. 500 minus 300. So this is also going to give us. So I can actually write comments beside, my value. So you can see we have 200, 500 minus 300. So let's try the multiplication. Console.log 20 times 30. So that should give us 600. So let's do console.log. 50 divided by 2. So that should also give us. So this is division. So are you guys following? Is there any question so far? Okay, and let's also be sure that we are still streaming on YouTube. that life has not happened to us. Okay, I think life has happened to us. Jesus, has it happened to us? Okay, I don't think life happened to us. Okay, I think it's still streaming. Okay, let someone just check the video while we are here, because I can't just imagine. I can't even begin to imagine that. Okay, so that's it. So, but so far, you guys understand what is going on, right? So we have console.log. I'm trying the modulo now. So let's say we have 7, modulo, what's it called? Modulo, 2. Of course, we know this will have a remainder. So you can see the modulo will just, it kind of outputs the remainder after performing the division operation. Does that make sense? Hello? Hello? Okay. Console.log. Okay, let me do 33 divided by 5. So you can see if you do the 3 divided by 5, it shows you the remainder. So, we have the only divisible point in 33 is 5 divided by 30, right? Or 30. So that's 6. So the remainder of 5 divided by 30, is what it is logging at, because after that point it cannot divide further. So it's more like 5 in 30. We have 6, then it remains 3. So the remainder is what the modulo operator logs. Does that make sense? Hello? Okay. So all of these operators we've seen so far are referred to as binary operators. Binary operators, and that's because they execute on more than one value. They execute on, at least, and they execute on 2 values. The word by actually depicts 2, right? So we have binary operators. So is either one value added to the other value to create another value, one value added to another value to create another value, one value and multiplying another value to create another one. So this one is subtraction, by the way. One value being divided by another to create a new one, right? So, and we have the output of all of those. So these are binary operators. Hello. Is there any question, or are you guys overwhelmed? Figure what? Okay. So, but is it clear so far? But at least if it is sinking in. Oh, okay. Okay. So that's that. So let's go over, so these are binary operators. And then, these operators also have precedence, just like we have precedence in CSS. You have to, understand that we have operators precedence here as well. Just like in BODMAS, BODMAS is basically, the precedence of the various, what do they call those things? Is it arithmetical signs or something? All these plus, minus, and so on. Jesus. What do they call these stuff? Plus, minus, or something, like in normal mathematics. Is it operators? Is, okay, is that what they call them? I just made that. I just felt like I made it up. Okay, so there's a, when we dealt with BODMAS, for instance, BODMAS will say, bracket or division, multiplication, addition, subtraction. So that means if you have any mathematical expression, more like 2 plus 3 divided by 2 times 9, that kind of something, minus 3. When you have this, so the precedence is BODMAS. That is, we execute everything in a bracket first, then we start dealing with the multiplication, right? Then we go on to divide whenever we see division. Then we go on to what? Then we go on to, multiplication is also off, right? So, but this first off is more like when you have, like a number outside of the brackets, if I still remember. So we have multiplication, we have addition and subtraction. So this is just basically precedence. So in programming as well, we have precedence, but I won't be talking so much about selector precedence, at the moment. But you should understand that plus and minus actually have the lowest precedence, and the division and multiplication have a higher precedence, just like you would assume in regular mathematics. Does that make sense? So we deal more on those later. So these are binary operators. We have unary operators as well. So I'm just going to try that. Okay, let me, instead of, so under this, let me just put, so here I will put we have unary operators. In other words, can you guess what a unary operator would do? Unary operator basically just performs okay, unary, that is spelling, okay, that's it. So basically, when we do console.log, and we are using console.log to just output a couple of things, a bunch of things. So when you do type of, I do type of 4. See what is that? Okay, it's type of, not typo. So type of 4, you see it says number, right? That is, it just operates on this and tells you the type of expression it is. And there's something I must emphasize on. Even if you have a number, as long as it is wrapped inside of a quotation sign, it is now a string. And as you can see we have a string here. So these 5 and these 5 are not the same. Let me bring that out again. So these 5 and these 5 are not the same. So you see one is a number and the other one is a string. Then if I do console.log type of true, you're going to see we'll have Boolean, which is the third type we talked about. So remember we said we have number, strings, Boolean, and empty values. So if we do type of undefined, we get undefined. And if we do type of null, we should get null as well. So there's not so much difference between null and undefined, because both of them are just representation of empty values. They are like a blank space in memory. So but yeah, it's showing object because basically if I do console.log, so you see what is happening. So basically both of these are empty values, and there are special cases where you get to use them. So there are places when if you use null, when you use null, there are instances when you use null to check whether a value exists or not. And there are instances where you use undefined to check whether a value exists or not. I don't know if you understand what I'm talking about. So this is more like a null in a non-primitive, like an empty value in a non-primitive scenario. While this is what's it called, like an empty value in a primitive type of sense. And you understand what I mean by primitive and non-primitive values as we go forward. But let me just remove this because I actually showed another kind of operator, but I'm not set to do that yet. So there's another advanced kind of operator, because we have binary, we have unary, and then we have ternary operators. But I'm not going to be talking about that yet, because talking about that, we're actually evaluating into some conditionals and control flows, which I don't want us to start talking about here. So what we are going to do now is we are going to try to use these same operators on a string value, and let's see what we get with that. So let me just remove everything here. So let me do what's it called, console. So let me do hello, and let me do plus. So you can see what we have here. It's joined the two strings together. Isn't that correct? It kind of just added them together. So this that I did right here is called string concatenation. So basically, when you decide to add two strings together, it does not evaluate just like when you add numbers together, because obviously, what do you expect to get when you add hello and word together? Are you supposed to get 55 or get 50 million naira in your account? No. What JavaScript does basically is to concatenate the strings together, and it gives you, a new value, which is one word out of the two of them. But as you can see, there's no space between them, so you have to account for the space by yourself, which is doing this. So this is called string concatenation. Does that make sense? So that's one way you can actually, use an operator on a string. So, but if you decide to do something like, let me just copy this down and decide to do, minus, we should get, not a number, because it can't perform that operation. How do you minus hello from word? It doesn't make sense, right? And if we decide to do multiplication as well, it doesn't also work. Still get not the number. Then try to divide it. It still doesn't work, not the number. Then try to use modulo. It still doesn't work. Because those are not numbers, basically. Those operations are basically for numbers. But JavaScript is so gracious that it actually allows you add two strings together. Isn't that good enough? So, but, don't feel bad as though our string is missing out. Okay, for instance, we are able to perform all of these nice operations on numbers, and yet on our string, we can barely do anything serious. So there's another concept such as string interpolation. So in string interpolation, what we use is what they call template literals. And we will be using this a lot during the course of this class. So it's more like a string created with backticks. So here we can decide to do something like this, and it's very amazing. You will like it. So we decide to put this kind of expression inside of the string, and we can do for, okay, I would say my birthday is for, okay, does that make sense? But let me say I'm trying to just get something. Okay, let me not use mine, because all the examples coming to my head is not a very good one. So let's say let's say John. If there's no John in this class, sorry, John. So John's birthday and birthday is supposed to be together is not birthday. Why do we keep using birthday? So John's phone is worth 400. And I can, and this, just watch what will happen. Okay, you already seen what will happen. So you can see we have 400 inside of the string, right? So this becomes nicer, because we can perform, arithmetic operations inside of the screen. Inside of the string using string interpolation. So you can see we have John's phone is worth 397. Can you see that? So we minus this from 400. You get the point. So this is called template literals. And what it means is that it doesn't try to convert the number type to a string. It doesn't coerce the number to become a string. So it's called, it reads every value inside of this backticks literally. So I think that's more like the ideology behind calling it template literals. Then it's also called string interpolation. It's also called that. So we can also go as far and say, and what, 1000 minus 33, and all of this will still evaluate. You can even use multiplication. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be this. You can perform whatever kind of expression. So see, John's phone is what, 300, and you can put a dollar sign in front. It doesn't affect the dollar sign of our, and that makes sense now. John's phone is worth $397, and his house is worth, 33,000 US dollars. John must be a very big boy. Okay, so that's that about string interpolation. So there are a lot of other operations you can perform on string, which I'm going to show you just one of them now. Maybe I'll show you two basically. So I'll say console.log, and I will have let's say maybe that won't work. Okay, because I don't want to run ahead of myself. Let's use template literals and just see what we can achieve. So let's say hello. Doesn't work. So let's leave it. I don't want to start declaring variable names, because what I was trying to do will actually, and tail variable names, and I don't want to start getting into all of that yet. So, but as you can see, we can, we can do some nice things with strings in JavaScript, and these are a couple of examples of what you can actually do with strings in JavaScript. Does that make sense to you guys? And is there a question at this point in time, if you all are not sleeping yet? Okay, so basically, backticks are actually they are a new feature in JavaScript. Originally, for you to use strings in JavaScript, is either you use what's it called? Is either you use single quotes or double quotes, and then there's something else you can do, which is this. You can actually decide to use single quotes and say hello. He said. So this is. And then I use, I'm trying to quote someone inside of the string. So I said, he said, I won't. And you see this. This is what he said. I'm not coming. I can see we actually have, this quotation sign here. And what we do here is using a single quote, and then using double quote inside of it to actually create, an actual quotation, statement or a quote that what someone said. But I cannot use single quotes in my outer string and then also use single quote inside of my inner string. And that's what I talk about, the fact that the computer will only work based on the instructions that has been put in it from the point of design. And we as programmers will have to conform ourselves to those, rules in order for us to be able to write reasonable programs that the computer can actually read. You get the point. So backticks are actually a new development in JavaScript. I think they came in with JavaScript and ES6 or something like that. Yeah. So it wasn't always available like this. You didn't always you can't all you it wasn't possible to do this before now. So what you would do before template literals came actually was, and let me comment this out because I'm going to come back to that to show you something else. What you would do before is, if I wanted to write this same thing I wrote about, John's phone is what, I would have said John's, and you can see I don't have, John's, you can see that, it kind of just pushed my S out of the single quotations, and if I put the other quotations, you see I'm having an error. Can you see that? So one other thing I have to do is I will have to escape, I have to escape this other quotation sign, which is, this is how I escape it in a string. I use this, forward slash. I can say I have John's, but I can't just say John's. You get the point. The only other way for me to do it is to use a different kind of quote, which is this, and it doesn't look so good. You get the point. Or I have to use, a double quote on the outer part of my string, so I can use a single quote inside. But I cannot use the same kind of quote I'm using outside inside of my string. Does that make sense? So what they would do then was to escape the characters, like what I did now. I would escape it. And I would say John's phone is what? And then I'll put a space and I'll say plus. Remember, we can actually add. So we say 400 minus 3. Then I will now say plus again. Then I'll create another, quote sign, and I'll say, and his house is what? And here I will do well to actually put my dollar sign as well. And you can see this actually looks very rough compared to this, right? So, and his house is what? His house is what? And these are all possible. His house is what? 1000 times 33. Yeah. Okay, plus. I forgot to add plus. So, okay, we have his nan's house is what? What is that called? It's line 38. I said John's. Oh. You actually see what it is doing. You see what it's doing. It's actually trying to divide John by. So I'm actually supposed to be able to escape this like this. Okay, for some reasons it's not escaping, but the only way to just get around, but you can see it's actually trying to perform a division operation from here on this. Can you see it? That's what it's trying to, that's what you're getting now, not a number, you get. So not a number implies that it is trying to divide John by apostrophe S, which doesn't make any sense. So template literal is actually neater, but the other way to get around this is just to use double quotes outside, on the outside of this function, and everything works just fine. So another thing Prettier does for me is that by the time I save this, it's going to solve that problem for me. You will see it's going to change to double quotes, and it's going to come out just fine for me. So it's still writing none, but I don't have none again. Let me try to refresh. This is not supposed to be showing up. This is already John, so I have no idea why it is doing that. So for some reasons, it's not. Okay. No. The 100 minus 3, I think. Okay, wait. Oh. And this. Okay, it's not even showing the 100 minus 3. So. Okay. It's basically trying to just add everything together here. It's trying to add all of these things. So it's basically one of those problems you face when you are so you can see what's happening now. So I have to, it's the precedence is the selector precedence. So the plus and minus selector have the same precedence. So not selector, operators rather, CSS. So when two operators have the same precedence, it will normally read them from left to right. Do you understand that? So the only way to override that is by adding a parenthesis around them. So it will be just fine. You get. So we escape characters using this. So let's say I want to move this character to the next line. All I just need to do is to put this backslash and press N. It is going to move every other thing. What is that? Hold on. So John's phone is what? So this should work just fine. Okay, I think a lot of interpolation. So hold on, let me just try and do that underneath here. So hello. So hello and what should be on two different lines, as you can see. So that's the way it works. So if you want to escape a character, move the other character to a new line. So you just put /n. And if you want, what you want is just a tab. I think what you do is /t. So it's going to tab it inside. As you can see what it is doing to it. Hello. Yeah. So we've been able to do some operations on a string. So we have a couple of things already going on here. So here for Boolean values, you basically you don't add Boolean. Okay, let's just try and do that. Let's try and. It's very good. It's always very good to experiment. So I said Boolean value evaluates to either what or what. No. True or false. True or false. Yeah. I said true or false. That's what. Don't worry, you get a hang of it. Just make sure you watch the replay so you get everything we discussed. So I know it's a lot to take in for the first time, but kind of just ensure that you. So what we do with this one, okay, let's say we say true plus true. Okay, and this one of that this something is about JavaScript. There's something called, and we'll get to that in a bit. It is called type coercion. And what JavaScript does is that when you are trying to perform an operation on a particular value type, and that operation is not basically meant to be on that value type, what it does is it tries to in the background convert that value type if it is possible. And basically, true is most times sorry true, no, not triple. So most times true will always be equal to 1, while false will always evaluate to 0. So you can see that, here false equals 0 is true, while true equals 1 is also true. You get the point? But if I say false equals 1, it's going to say false. So whenever you want to evaluate something to true or false, 0 is, and that's what they call this is called in JavaScript implicit type coercion. And we are not talking about that now. So I was just trying to show you something. So whenever you use an operator on a value and JavaScript can directly perform that operation on that value, it tries to coerce it into another value type, and that's what it did here. It converted this true to number, then converted this to number. When it converted this became 1. This also became 1. So adding them together became 2. I don't know if that makes sense to you. Yeah. So false minus true. So it's -1, and false minus false should be 0 as well, I suppose. Yeah. So that's type coercion. It coerces this type. And then there's something else we need to try. So when you have 5, let's say 5 plus -5, what do you think is going to happen? JavaScript will coerce this string 5 to a number so that it can operate on it with this other one. Does that make sense? But if it is plus, guess what is going to happen? It is going to coerce the number to become a string. So there's a lot of weird things about JavaScript basically. And when you understand these fundamental things, you kind of just get the hang of it. Because when you begin to write large, complex programs, you'll be able to understand why some things behave the way they do. Do you understand what I'm talking about? For instance, there's a type of value in JavaScript called, let me not talk about that now. So you can see on Boolean values, you basically don't want to do plus or minus on Boolean values, but at least you have something like this. You can compare true plus true, and so you can add true to true. Then you can do console.log. And then you can you can do all of these things together, and it kind of just evaluates. But there's another kind of operator. How many kind of operators we talked about now? We talked about arithmetic operators, which can be binary or unary operators. And I said there's another one, and that's the ternary operator. But we are not talking about that now. So now we are going to be dealing with comparison. So this is when you have less than or greater than, less than, equal to, or greater than or equal to. So when you have equality, not equal, I'm actually feeling lazy. Let me just write them in front of it. Equality. Then we have you get the point. So on so on Boolean values, so on numbers, you can actually definitely you can carry out all of these operations because they are basically more like mathematical. They can be used to create mathematical expressions. So okay, so since we've applied most of these things to all of these data types, so let's just start applying the comparison from the number types down to the bottom right. I think that makes sense, right? So, and I don't think this thing is properly arranged even. Is it? Okay, I think you get the hang of it. So here let's do comparison. So we have console, and we are using console.log to output everything. So console.log, we can do 2 is less than 3. What do you think is going to evaluate it? We evaluate to a Boolean, right? So 2 is less than 3 is what? True. So you have console.log 3 is greater than or equal to 5. It evaluates to what? False. Then we can have console. Okay. Let me do less than, greater than. 3 is greater than 2. So that evaluates to true. less than or equal to. So that's false. So we have console.log 5 equals 4. That will evaluate to false. Console.log 5 equals 5. That will be true. So when we say console.log 5 is not equal to 3, that should be true. So you can see this is the comparison operators. You understand? And then they always evaluate to a Boolean, right? It's either what you're comparing is true or not, right? Is either this value is equal to this or this is not equal to this. Is either this value is greater than this or is not greater than this. You get the point? So that's that about these kind of operators. Is everybody still here with me? Is it clear? Is it clear? Hello? Yeah. So, but this basically are just the building blocks, and when you are able to get the hang of all of this, it's going to make a lot of sense to you eventually. So data types and so on. So I think this probably is a good place to stop. I don't want to enter into logical operators or so on. Or do you want me to enter into that? We still have 10, or there are still a couple of them. Maybe, what we'll do? In the next class, we just kind of do a review of what we've done so far. Then we just do the last two categories of things, then some other add-ons. So I think let's stop here. So does that make sense? So after now, let me just end the stream now, and then that should be it for tonight. Then after that, we just do some question and answers, and that's it. So thank you very much, guys. I hope you enjoyed the class, and it's revealing. I hope you learned a couple of things, especially about your old computer science classes in DSS2 or DSS3 and so on.